All right, that's fur right there. I'm doing a little survey for putting goats out here, and I want to make sure there aren't any coyotes. There have been wild dogs back here, but I'm basically doing a walk. I'm not going to talk for a long time, but I'm basically doing a walk with the GPS around the perimeter of the property, looking at areas where I could put fencing through the undergrowth, as well as access to bring in water, bring in feeders, that kind of thing for goats. But we're coming across this area. We got good access points everywhere. By the way, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. One of the things we do on our channel is help you get maximum value from your land in a holistic and regenerative way. So this land's a lot of scrub, a lot of undergrowth. And so we've assessed that running goats on small strip pastures, moving through this area, so you might have seen in the other videos where we've got a lot of these trails. Many of these trails run in parallel, they run on contour, and so we can put fencing in one trail and run it through the woods to a trail or clearing in the other side. And so we can have goats in that, inside of electric. And so, for example, where I'm standing right now, down to the other side is another trail. It looks kind of like what I'm walking on right now. We can put those posts in place where they'll be out of the way of people that need to navigate the trail, but close enough where I can come in and fill up an IBC tote and give our animals more water than they need. That's the big clue on planning, is to get them more water than they need. Because that way, if you can't get out here for some reason, you're still covered. But I have been finding, on this walkabout, I've been finding a little bit of squirrel action. Well, the remains of squirrels. And then in yesterday's video when I came through here, I did find some dog poop. So we don't want to be putting animals out someplace where there's heavy predation, because we're not here to feed the coyotes, or you know, we're here to raise some animals. So this area down here, I'll show you a little bit of the fencing that we're using. And by the way, the areas that are forest mulch have very little pick. There's very little pick coming in. It will come in, but there's very little. So we're gonna see, you can see the deer grazed it or browsed it. But what we're gonna do here, a little bit of grass is in here, but not that much. What we're gonna do is set up a line. So here's some of the fencing we're used, but we're basically gonna set up a line down here that is one long line of electrified fencing. On the inside of that fence, we're going to run out some rectangles, or we'll run to another set of fence that's on the other side, and that other set of fence is not electrified. And the reason is we got one charger, it's in a good sunlight area, and then we run off our temporary fencing. And some of this temporary fencing needs repaired. Some of it's like chicken fencing. So I've got a couple ribbon fencing and a couple other things we're going to be working with. But basically we'll set up strips, contour strips, big roll rectangles, put 2 or 3 goats in there, then start looking at, you know, how much feed do we need to bring in. If we're going to do water, see, I could put an IBC tote up on the hill over there and run it, and as long as I'm within 200 feet of where my waters are, I could just run that hose down the hill and then wind that hose back up, take it to the next water, open the fence up, let the goats come through to the next location, get them fed, get them set up, and we'll be good to go. Now, I am an apprentice. I'm learning how this works. So I'm not an expert on this. I'm learning how it works. I'm open to your comments below. But basically, we're going to treat this like a goat brush clearing. And we're just going to let the goats get in there and brush clear until we have a system in place for this particular piece of land. Now, that's what I talk about in all the videos. Your permaculture design plan might be generic in what you want to achieve, but when you find a piece of property or you're renting a piece of property, your plan is going to get more specific for that piece of property. But again, there's not a lot of calories out here, so we're looking at other options on how to get more calories out here. Because right now it's the end of March. You're starting to get a little bit of green going, and these paths have opened up the sunlight into the woods. So we're going to have some green, but a lot of these pines are not going to put on a lot of calories. Now the goats will still eat it. They'll knock down all this small stuff, and they'll chew on You know, they'll chew this kind of stuff through the ground. But essentially, I want to pelletize this forest. I want to pelletize the undergrowth. So if we have that hot line down here, which is literally going to be a hot fence line, we still want to keep room for the ATVs. We'll want to even pick up a lot of this this brush and stuff that's on the ground and stack it up for firewood or for campfires. But what we've got in the woods itself, and I'll get around to it here, what we got in the woods itself is a lot of thorns, a lot of briars, a lot of rough, a lot of mess. So we can take a lot of this cover here, a lot of this brush, and just leave it. The goats will stomp on it and whatever, but if we take it out, we want to move it over here onto our hedge line. So we'll stack it up in brush dams so that we have our small game, our squirrels, our rabbits and stuff out there on the outer edge. And then on the inside, we have our goats and such. But the, you know, the coyotes, things like that, hopefully will stay off the property. Now there's also bear out here. So we want that stuff off the property. We want nice, fat goats on the property. And we want those goats to be eaten as much as possible. So you can see in the trails, we've got some regrowth. But if those goats don't have enough to eat inside their perimeter fence, they will just leave. And then we don't want to be chasing goats around the woods. Now, a lot of this stuff that's hung over and fallen, we're going to do some trail work. But you can see from kind of like how hedges work, English hedges, you can see how the tree's fallen over, but now the new branches are going straight up in the air. So we'll cut out this kind of stuff because we don't want anything hanging over a fence. But again, that hot wire is probably going to come down here for the test because I got an easy path to go right up, back up to the top of the hill there. So this section right here probably have, I think we're going to do like a 1/4 acre sections or 1/8 of an acre sections, probably 2 or 3 goats, maybe 4 goats, and they're going to come through. And then the next section would be down here. So again, I'm showing you this to demonstrate why the paths are so wide. I can get a truck back here. I don't need to get a truck back here. But when we have animals, this access route needs to be safe for vehicles. So when I put up my fence, the mindset around it, see all those little trees that are marked green? Those little trees have got to come out so that we can drive a truck down here with you know, IBC tote in the back, or probably only half full because I don't have a full-ton truck. Probably might have a mini truck out here or a side-by-side with 65 gallons of water. Come out there and wash the totes and everything. But then up on the hill, have a cistern with a lot more water in it that can be easily refilled. And then we kind of rotate these 1/8 of an acre paddocks around that main water tank. So today I might run a hose down the hill here to some water, and I'll be able to drive in here to get access, bring some feed in and things. More likely the watering will be up the top of the hill, because we want to, one of the animal behavior things you want to look at is that you want to keep bringing the animals into the core of your property. So if the animals are coming downhill to get water and the water runs out, they're going to keep going downhill till they can find water. Why is that? Because water goes downhill and eventually accumulates in a dry creek bed. So if we have a big cistern at the top of the hill, like an IBC tote or 2, and we're watering them somewhere up near the top of the hill, they're going to look for new water up the hill. So we're training them to avoid the fence, but we're also training them to move towards the water sources where we can manage them. So the shelter might be up top there, and the water might be up top there. We might even feed them up top there. Now, it depends on what we're feeding them, depends on how many calories they got out here in the woods, depends on how the woods grow back. But as the goats are coming through here, we'll start taking out a lot of this brush and stuff that's fallen down. Some of it will be turned into biochar, some of it will become brush dams. So the stuff that's going to become a brush dam will come down to the outside, and that'll get into a hedge or into some brush. Might even get brought down here to the trail and cut up for firewood. But the goats, we want them all moving towards the center of the property, because we want to modify their behavior to tend to go where it's safest and easiest for us to manage. So there are some aspects of this I do fully understand. But again, if you have any questions, if you're not sure about what I'm saying from the animal behavior perspective, ask those questions below. We're thinking about doing a whole series on this, but I just wanted you to see the practical application of the trails. These trails go the entire perimeter of the property. In fact, me and a guy just walked them. It takes 30 minutes to walk the entire perimeter of the property, and that means that no matter where these goats are, no matter what paddock they're in, which we're going to have satellite maps with numbers, no matter what paddock they're in, they have water that's placed at a high site, because there's no agricultural well here. So they got water that's placed at a high site. And even if there was a well, I'd pump the water up high, because we want to make sure we can gravity feed that water to the animals. Even if there's a solar water pump or something like that, we want to gravity feed the water to the animals. That way we know they've got water. We can put a little float valve in there, and so as they use up the water, that'll replenish the water for them. We want them behaviorally to keep moving to the core of the land, and then we want to rotate them around the property. This particular property is probably going to have like pinwheel rotation with some kind of central water, some kind of central shelter. But again, we might have a skid shelter to pull around. Just depends on what's going on. But this is something, again, you plan it on paper. You start working with people in your region who have done similar things. You might even contract the goats and animals out here on the property rather than owning them yourself. So you might be paying a contract fee to have somebody bring animals out on your land while you're getting the infrastructure in place. But my quote to fence in a 12-acre paddock and a 10-acre paddock with a connecting alleyway was $47,000. Okay? I don't have $47,000. If I just had the $47,000, the meat markets don't make that worthwhile. So if I had the $47,000 to do that, I'd be better off just investing it somewhere. Because again, if you put the fences up, and then you get the animals in there, and then the animals go to market, and you don't get enough money to cover at least the amortization or the cost of those fences over a fixed period, then you are losing money. So again, Prosperity Homestead is about prosperity, not about losing money. Now, is this land perfect for what I want to do with it as far as family camping, as far as getting out here and having a good time and stuff like that? It certainly is. I don't have to do a single thing to this piece of land after the initial work that you saw in the previous videos. But now, if I want to raise the productivity as an agricultural property and a farm, then I'm going to be raising animals out here, and those animals are going into a market pool. So I'll be raising animals here. There's other farms in the areas raising animals. We're building a community around the animals, and then we can all go to market, all at one time. Now, if, for example, while I'm building the barn, these animals need to come off of this land, by being in a network or a cooperative, I can take the animals off this land, and somebody can put them on another piece of land, because the animals themselves may not necessarily be owned by me. There may be a buck or two in here that goes on the rotation, and there may be someone else's buck coming through here, and there's paperwork requirements. So again, it's not just get a couple goats and get them going in your yard. Those are pets, and you will lose money on that. And it's not all about the money, by the way. I want these animals super healthy. That's why we don't come out here and put 20 or 50 goats all at one time. Now, the last point I want to make is that this has got to be easy for the goats, and it's got to be easy for me. Because if it takes a lot of extra labor, other than maybe 2 hours a day, then if you add your labor costs in, you'd be better working for the man and eating Soylent Green. But again, I don't want to eat Soylent Green. A lot of you guys out there have been writing in, and you're concerned about the economy. You're concerned about food costs, and there's not enough calories on this land in deer and squirrel and other things alone. So we've got to get the calorie count up in a respectful way, in a way that's going to be mindful of what this land is. And then if we make any decisions to change the land, like say it's cut, or we open up some areas for grass pasture, because I had mentioned in previous videos there might be an opportunity for some sheep here and there as partnership with other farms. Ultimately, those decisions will come along, and we need to make them both the dollar and cents, and we need to make them both for health of the animal and also for health of the property. Another thing about the goats all moving towards a central location is that we can also manage some of the erosion that may happen when you have too many animals on a piece of property. So we don't want to ever get to too many animals. But again, we're observing the land, we're being good stewards of the land, and then we're ultimately producing a product. In this case, would be goat meat, and we're doing that in a phase. So in past videos, I've talked about hogs, I've talked about goats, I've talked about rabbits. You don't do them all at one time. So the goats are the first ones because they're going to open up the forest. Maybe not on pigs. Maybe not on rabbits. Maybe not on chickens. Maybe not on ducks. So I hope this video has been useful to you. The key is I want to share with you the practical implementation as I'm learning. I'm taking you along with me on my learning journey. I also want to introduce you to some experts and some folks that really know what they're doing as far as experience and practice. Because again, you can watch all the YouTube videos you want, but not until you get out and do something. And so we're building a network of people that are actually doing something. I'd love to hear your comments below. I'd love to hear about your experiences. We're in zone 7 in a temperate climate, and this particular property has a lot of overgrowth, really no timber value, maybe some chip value in here, but ultimately we're looking at getting this thing lined up. Hot fence right here, cold fence on the other side, temporary fencing to connect the two, move the animals through 1/8 of an acre at a time, and then we can start reducing that down depending on the season and figure out how many animals we can support, and then we expand this operation. Meanwhile, running the numbers, monitoring the behavior, getting the task list together. If you need help doing this kind of thing, from the project management, from the land management perspective, I do have expertise there. I can answer your questions. And if you have specific animal or livestock questions, there are people in my community who offer classes, they offer hands-on experiences, they offer information, and I'll put you in touch with those individuals so you can get the results you're looking for. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you have questions about what I'm covering here or anything I said, you got a correction, you've got tips, you got experience, then put it in the comments below or visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org and go to the contact page, ask your questions. We also got to have a newsletter. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next podcast.